It's a weekend of lots of different reasons to be sad. If you're under Thieves fan, in fact, virtually unlimited reasons to be sad. But you know, the thing about that is we are here to help you cope, as we always are.
Mm-hmm.
Come 100 Talk with your dads. Welcome.
Hey.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi, Cole. We're pretty good at coping.
We are. And you know what I've noticed is that a lot of times coping is about putting on a brave face, and it's about, you know, presenting yourself strongly, and your beard hasn't wavered at all. And I appreciate
Exactly
that.
right,
That gives
Cole.
me personally an added measure of comfort.
It's my coping beard, Cole. It's I started growing it when there was a pandemic, but hey, you know, whatever. Multi-use, multi-purpose beard. We'll go with it.
I actually gave myself the nasty short trim recently, so getting back to the shorter length because it's spring and it's the spring playoffs, aka the mid-season showdown.
Ooh.
And it has not gone well so far, but we're here to talk about it. So just a few quick reminders. We're going to try and be better about this, about saying who we are and what we do, because we've had a bunch of new people coming in, and we realize that, you know, some people are still not realizing we are on Twitch, for instance, and we thought that we should take some measures to address that. So yes, this is 100 Talk. I'm Cole, and that's Jordan. This is 100 Thieves League of Legends fan podcast. We're live on Twitch, YouTube at 100 Talk Pod. And you can follow us on Twitter there as well. And we have a fancy little Discord that I'm going to put in the Twitch chat for anybody who wants to come hang out with us during the week and talk all things 100T, not just League of Legends, but CDL, Valorant, and the various other activities like collecting the limited edition apparel. So anyway, everybody's welcome. And we are powered by the one and only Rip It Energy Fuel, which is, I've got the active camo can tonight since I got the green screen going. And this is a lime wrecker. It's $1. It's fire. It's the only good energy drink around. If you're not drinking it, what in the world are you doing?
That's exactly right. That was a good intro, Cole. Well done.
It was a little bit all over the place, but we got to get better at telling what we're doing here.
Nailed it.
I don't think there's any way around what happened this weekend. It was like, look, the main thing is, were we not expecting a 3-0 or thereabouts? We all were. So
we both called it, Cole. We're on record. The prophet spoke. The prophet delivered. 3-0.
Yes, one of the two of us delivered on our prophecy. We won't forget. I'm pretty sure you 3-1'd us, right?
No, I said 3. I'm pretty sure
good.
I said 3-0.
Good.
Review the tape.
Good. Someone can review the tape. But
I
it
said,
doesn't matter.
I hedged. So I get fewer profit points, but I did say 3-0 because I followed you, and I didn't want people to think that I was just being a copycat. Although it's a safe thing to do if you're in the betting game. Just copy Cole.
You know, when it comes to profit stuff, yes, perhaps. I've been on a real streak here. So yeah, we kind of expected what happened this weekend. I will say overall, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to dissect the games very closely this weekend. There's only a few points to hit about these games. Like I said, it mostly went to expectations. I would even argue that perhaps we performed a little bit better than I thought. I said, I tweeted out, anything better than a curb stomp, I'm fine with. And we didn't get curb stomp. We just got straight up beat, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there were glimmers of hope at different points in time. There were power spikes. There were buffs that we claimed. So, you know, it wasn't like 3 perfect games.
Yeah. But we did have some questions coming out of those games. I don't know about you, but the biggest thing of where I wanted to go first tonight was the revelation this weekend that apparently Ssumday's body is being piloted by one of those Men in Black aliens. Like if you pop open his face, there's a little alien inside who's at the controls. It's not the typical Ssumday that we've seen. Look, we've leaned into this more and more as the split's gone on, and we've had more and more evidence as the split's gone on. He just seems to be off. And it's getting worse, I would argue. And he looks like it's hard to describe what the play looks like, but I would probably throw out the word anemic, where there's just nothing to it, right? There's no oomph. We didn't even get, usually we get like a balance of the not so great decisions and getting caught out with some flashes of the Ssumday we all know and love, which does the insane outplays, predictive moves, all of that. We didn't get much of that at all this weekend. In fact, we might not have gotten a single, okay, there's Ssumday play the entire weekend, which was super weird. And I am having, I would say, of all the things that we're dealing with as fans, coping with this current Ssumday form is probably the most difficult for me personally. How are you feeling, man?
About that specifically, sad. Feel sad about that. Yeah. It's been the one reliable thing since the start of this entire program, right? Has been Ssumday. And it's really weird. It's really weird because a lot of times, players who are great will start to lose a step, right? They'll lose a step. Their APM will drop. Their aim isn't the same. It seems to be like a cliff, though, where it honestly looks like a different player. Like a lot of the tendencies aren't there. A lot of the kind of the flair, like the signature moves just are gone. So I really don't know. And I think for that reason, it's almost when that happens, right? My initial reaction isn't Ssumday is just being like he's being left behind. It's like something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? It feels more like that. Right? Say he's got the yips. Like he can't throw a fastball anymore. But he's still a professional pitcher. He just forgot how to throw his fastball. Like that's a real thing that happens to people. And then you gotta shake it off. So I'm not saying that that's what's happening here for sure, but I do wonder. It's such a strange and sudden drop that I wonder if it's more that than just he is no longer better than the folks he's up against, right?
It's a tough judgment to make because we're caught in that no man's land where clearly as players age, at some point they're going to get worse. I know there's a lot of discussion about like, oh, that's not real. The age curve isn't real. You play just as long as you're dedicated to the game. Well, there's two things to it. One is there ain't no 45-year-old league players, and there won't ever be. Two, I forgot what I was going with the second one.
Well, the first one is enough, Cole.
Yeah, but
concept is there.
You have to balance that whole, like, is he actually falling off or is he just streaking badly right now? The problem is with him, so much of this is probably mental on some level, and we know that he's someone who takes not performing well very hard and very personally. When you read off-season interviews with him for the past couple of seasons where we haven't done well, I mean, it seems like it weighs super heavy on him. Right. Which has always felt a little unfair because he's been, as you said, the one constant bright spot of the program, the one thing we could always rely on. So it's sad to see that happen to him, and now we're just left wondering: is this going to be a thing, or is this just a temporary mental block? We know it's gone on for several weeks now, but so far it's kind of looked like, like True Venom said in the chat, it's like Fudge took over Ssumday's body and Ssumday's taken over Fudge's. That's the part of this body matchup swap that we thought we could definitely count on beating them in. It's like, okay, at least we'll have top lane.
Yes.
And maybe they'll go even, or more likely Ssumday will just outperform Fudge. Well, we didn't get either of those. We just got losing. And for the first time since we've been talking about the slump, he got a lot of attention from closer up in the top lane too. So
right.
Extra worrying. It wasn't just he was left on an island. He actually was given attention and resources. So I'm very sad that we had like this Freaky Friday situation where they swapped bodies. I love this guy. He's my favorite player. I don't know what to make of it.
Right. And I think that is the thing about this C9 team, right? If there is one point to potentially exploit, it is their top lane. I don't think that's even an argument. That's just a fact. And we were actually pretty well positioned to do that, we thought. So the fact that we didn't do it at all, and in fact it was kind of flipped, I mean, it made the outcome that much more guaranteed, right? Like that is, if you can create a problem for C9, at least they got to figure out what to do with it. But if that becomes another point of strength from on the map, then they're just moving from point to point of strength. So,
right.
With that, it's kind of like we had maybe one winning position in the bot lane, and on paper, right? Mm-hmm. Like usually on paper, when you stack up against C9, it's like, all right, well, Perks is Perks. That's Blabber is Blabber. Sven and Vulcan are pretty hot. So it's top. You're left with top. And if if the way the math is recalculated on that is you got Fudge too, so watch out. Like you don't win that series. And if other people hope to beat C9 in this playoffs, it will be through probably at least partially through that, right? If you're thinking TL, then Alfari's got you would assume has a good chance. I guess it's possible that Fudge is just some kind of like Renaissance man who's had a late season awakening here, but that seems unlikely to me, given where he started and kind of how the split has gone overall. So I don't know. That's where we're at right now. We have five, maximum. Well, I guess not maximum. At least 3 games left, maybe 5, maybe more, if we can beat Dig. But I got a lot of questions about Ssumday. Like I am no longer certain how he fits into this team anymore, which is not something I ever thought I'd be saying at this point in the proceedings, Cole. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think it's the one thing that we didn't predict. I mean, everything else seems to have played out like we anticipated. We're sitting in a position in the standings where we predicted.
Nope.
Our bot lane is playing as predicted. Our mid lane is playing as predicted. Maybe our jungle's a little worse than we imagined. We'll talk about that too. But yeah, it's like some days the big, like, okay, that's the thing I didn't see coming. And honestly, that's the thing I would not ever want to see coming. So let
me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is that part of the reason that this feels more sad?
Yes.
So you finish 4th or 5th, which is what we predicted. You lose against C9, who is the 1 seed and who is, has made world-class investments, including, world-class funding investments into their team. So yeah, the outcome to that, and I'm seeing people in chat say, yeah, bummer, not surprised, bummer. Nobody picked us to win this. It's not like we threw or we blew a chance or we fall asleep at the wheel. It's just like,
it's not like the Big Ten at the March Madness tournament. Yes,
exactly. Where everybody said that they're over, they're overranked. They're not actually that good. Like people knew that we were not as good as C9. And I think we knew that. So it's not a surprise. But I think for me, the thing that feels sad and concerning is that we finished where we did and we no longer have a sure thing in Ssumday. I think this feels very different if we finish 4th or 5th and Ssumday's a lock, still solid, as steady as ever, reliable person to build around, a stone in the top lane, and FBI and Huhi can take on any bot lane. Because then I think what you have is the same question we've had for a long time, which is, what are you doing mid? But now we have questions basically everywhere, right? I think maybe except for bot lane. And before we get into other lanes, I won't jump there, but that for me is concerning in a way that I hadn't expected, right? Like that is what progress looks like. It's when you can ink in, okay, we got Ssumday top. That's a lock. We got FBI Huhi bot. That's great. We feel really good about that. And now we just got to figure out some of the fine tuning, the details, get those things figured out. And, granted, mid is the biggest fine tuning detail of all time. But it feels more manageable. It feels to me like we're losing control of the roster again. We've seen this happen. We've seen this play out. We know how this can go, which is where you take one step forward and then you take 8 positions back in the LCS standings. That hurts. So I'm worried about that right now.
Yeah. At least what we know about Ssumday, he's still cute and he's still kind. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Those things will never change, and we'll have to console ourselves that way.
I'll go back to what I said earlier. I'm not ready to say it's over with Ssumday, but the question is there,
for sure.
And it has to be asked and answered. Certainly before, I'd say before next split starts. Like we have to have a very good idea about this before we get going.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Like I don't think this is like, okay, cool, let's put tenacity in. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Especially because a player of Ssumday's caliber has earned the right to be given the benefit of the doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can agree this is really the first time we've had that question mark about him since 2018 when he joined us. So there's just no way you're gonna knee-jerk react to this. Now I will say it has been going over multiple weeks now, so there's that thing. This is more than just a bad game or a bad weekend. Yes. We know that.
Exactly.
But we don't know how long it's going to last. And I think that when the team is in a better mental space, I think he will return to form in some way. But I think clearly the vibes on the team are heavy and not good at the moment. Just based on, and it's actually kind of crazy how palpable that is when really we're not that bad objectively, right? Like we're not a good LCS team, right? Like we're 4th or 5th place team. Yeah. But it feels so much worse than the standings are. And a lot of that is probably having to do with how the fans treat people and our expectations, which got out of line, and you and I have been trying to to have us remind ourselves of where we legitimately expected to be at the beginning of this year. But I just feel like there's just this weight on top of the program right now. And I'm sure that is felt by the staff and by the players, because it's definitely felt by the fans, and fans are, the kind of people who will definitely reflect that back on social media and Reddit, etc. So prayers up for Kind Boy, right?
Yeah, we could use some sort of a turnaround there. I don't know what it would take, but boy, would it be nice if next series he just pops off.
Yeah, we need that. Do you want to go to mid lane and talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that.
So Ryoma.
Yep.
One of the, honestly, like going into this series not expecting to win it at all, this is basically one of the only things that I was looking at. Is like this and what are we going to draft are basically the two things that I was interested in seeing. We need more Ryoma data, right? So this is one more weekend of Ryoma. Now we've seen him for the equivalent of a half round robin, right? He's played 2 full weekends and a 3-game series. So that's 9 games that he's played, which is half a split. We didn't get the Silas pick this weekend, which was a little surprising. But we did get a look at him in more context on the team. What were your thoughts?
I think I'm borrowing this phrase from somebody, but he wasn't our worst player, right?
Which is probably, which you say, because it's probably we're expecting him to be our worst player, right?
Yeah, I would say it's fair to assume that the guy who gets subbed in 2 weeks before the playoffs start is going to be your worst player, unless he's some Hail Mary signing that you bring in because, wow, the head office managed to find a way to get that one arranged. So yeah, I mean, one, you're asking a ton of him, right? Hey, join this squad that you're not overly familiar with and play against C9. Play against Perks. Like, there are a lot of series that have been played against Perks where the opponent could be said to have been the worst player on the Rift.
Yeah.
And in part because Perks makes that happen to people, right? He makes them look that way. So I think the fact that Ryoma wasn't our worst player is a feather in the cap of some sort. I'm not sure how proud you are to have that one or pleased you are. But he held his own, right? Like he
reasonably
and reasonably, like we didn't lose through mid. Um,
I mean, Perks popped off game one. The Yone in game
Yes.
one was really nasty.
Right.
But it didn't feel like that came as a product of his lane, you know?
Right. It felt like they were getting more advantage through top lane, which is insane to say, but that is partially what was happening there. So it's interesting here to hear you say that we need more Ryoma data, because we have seen him play so much League. Like, he's probably one of our most played players. If you really break it down.
Yeah, but we have, what I mean is in the context of this team, right?
And that's what I was going to say.
Okay, yeah, because this is
data.
Right? Ssumday's the only player from the last time he played with us, you know. So how he fits into this team is a different piece of the puzzle, and everyone is still having, and we'll get to this later, but everyone is still having that should Damonte be in conversation that we should have put to bed a long time ago. But the fact is, like, I know his Ryoma's game stats, especially game 2, they don't look pretty. And I don't think he played particularly well, but I don't think he played particularly bad anyway. And I think, like you said, the difference is I expected him to be our worst performing player, and he wasn't. He was probably right in the middle, because I have a lot more question marks about Ssumday and Closer over the course of this series than I did about Ryoma, which is weird. I still maintain that I think he fights pretty well. And does some interesting things. And I think the limited options that are given to him through his champion selections, he makes interesting use of, and at times fight-changing plays. And that, unfortunately, a lot of times means escapes. Some of these Azir walls freeing up people to escape was a big deal throughout the course of these games. I know someone made a comment about the bad Orianna ults. I mean, I saw pretty good ones actually from him, and he's not Perks level Orianna ults, but I didn't think his were that bad. At least across the board, they weren't that bad. So yeah, there's just this whole thing where it's like, it doesn't seem particularly bad, and he was not the reason we were losing these games, which is, I think you were alluding to. Now, certainly, I'm not disputing at all that if we had a top quality mid laner in there, that we would be in a way better position to maybe win these games. I'm not disputing that at all. I'm not out here saying he's actually a great player for us, but I'm just surprised that so much attention was directed his way, when I think if you go into this objectively, the other question marks are a little more pressing. I mean, why, for instance, are we like counter picking for him, but still picking like an Orianna or whatever, right? Yeah, those questions are of more import than, did he miss a cannon in lane?
Yes. Which, did he miss a cannon in lane, Cole? Get him out of here. Get him.
Well, we didn't have Freak on the cast to tell us for sure that happened.
Wasn't Freak casting?
I mean, we didn't hear him do that like he usually does. Right. So I would assume that he did not, because Freak on the cast will always point that out, because he has his whatever is rubbing him the wrong way about 100 Thieves. He's definitely making it known on the cast.
Doesn't like those cannons. Let me say this about Rama. I think that I know. I said this when he came back. I feel like I know who he is and what we can expect from him, and it is that he is. You said he was like middle of the pack on the team, right? With them, like he was like, not our best, not our worst. I think he's going to be an average, probably middle of the pack mid laner in the LCS. I think that's what you can expect. He has looked better on this team than I think he did on our last team, because I think this team is better largely, right? Obviously, this team has a hard time playing together and finding kind of the synergy needed to win games. But the talent level overall on this team is higher, and I don't think you can debate that, right? Like, and so I think that's what he is. I think he's not a top 3 mid. I don't think you can really question that. Nor do I think he's one of the worst mids in the LCS right now. He's not playing that way. And I think that's about what you can expect from Ryoma. And I don't think that's what we're aspiring to. I don't think that's what we want to have in the mid lane. And if we had our chance or our choice at a higher quality mid laner, I think we would take it, right? Like, I think we would still view that as a position where there's potential for upgrade. Yeah. And I think that's where we land, right? I think that is what, like, if he is our mid laner at the start of next split, which seems likely, I think we know approximately what we can expect. Like, I don't think he is going to pop off in ways that we haven't seen before. I don't expect that. I would be very happy to be wrong.
I'd be shocked if he got the opportunity to draft a champion where he could do that at this point.
Also that. And so, yeah, like that. I feel like it's set. I feel like that's set. I think the questions have been asked and answered about Ryoma. I think we know who he is and what he can bring to this team. And I think expecting anything different at this point is being a little bit, I don't know what the word is, Cole. What would the word be? It's being a little bit optimistic or unrealistic or just
out of touch.
You're kind of denying the reality of the situation. So for me, that it all kind of comes down to that. And you can look at individual plays and how he, team fights and how he does in lane and, does he scale as he needs to? But I think that's really what it boils down to is he's going to be a mid-pack mid laner unless something significant changes, like he's used differently than we've ever seen him used on this team, which seems unlikely at this point.
Yeah. Hey, I know this is kind of out of order, but there were a couple of listener takes related to this. Do you want to just go ahead and
let's do that?
Tackle a couple of these, just the ones that related to this. Let's start with with Honest Dragon. So Honest Dragon HD said, "Why didn't they sub in Damonte after game 2? Do you think that performance was expected either way out of 100T game 3?" So I think the implication is, like, do you think that Damonte couldn't turn the tide there? Like, it seems to be that he's implying that. I gotta say, and no disrespect, Honest Dragon, at all, but I don't see the point of making that substitution mid-series, especially when it's not like these guys have been constantly stepping in for each other. It was a clean break of a change. I doubt the team prepped with Damonte, and I doubt there's a reason to, because, like, I don't know. To me, it's there's no drastic difference here. I don't think it's like, oh man, when you put Damonte in, we win, and when we put Ryoma in, we lose, or vice versa, right? There is no strong effect here. And doing that mid-series, especially after just one game, would seem unusual to me. The only way they would do that, in my opinion, is if there was a specific plan to draft something weird that Damonte played a crucial point in. But honestly, like, we didn't get to see the Ryoma TF game when he was about to lock that in. We have seen him on Galio. I feel like I don't feel like Damonte offers something incredible that Ryoma doesn't. These two players are very similar for whatever reason. It's ended up being that these players are actually very similar with some minor differences. And I don't think that minor difference could turn the tides in this series overall. So why try something funky like that? So that suggestion wouldn't make sense to me, honestly. So again, no disrespect, Honest Dragon. Jordan, go ahead.
I was just going to add that we saw Damonte against Perks, and it didn't go well either. Like, that was, was that the last game? It was one of the last weekends I think we saw.
Which
Damonte against Perks?
Oh, I can't remember. Here, I'll figure that out. You keep talking, I'll figure it out.
But that's all I have to say is, I mean, that game, Damonte
it was
really. He was playing Orianna.
That was the famous Perks LeBlanc. Doesn't matter. It's Damonte game.
Yeah, was he playing Azir?
Damonte was on Azir. Perks played LeBlanc, and when they pointed it out in comms, he was like, it doesn't matter. It's Damonte.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we didn't have a mid who ended up beating Perks, and I think we had tape on the Damonte Perks matchup specifically, which would say this ain't a favorable one, right? If you're going to be putting him on stuff that we ended up drafting for Ryoma, that was not a good look. It was not a good look.
Yeah.
So,
kind of related to this was Lil Thieves. And I think this is actually the right take, as I've been alluding to. So this is what Lil Thieves said. The Ryoma versus Damonte debate is neurotic. Both of these players will never be a top mid in the world, let alone top mid in the LCS. This whole debate reminds me of Trubisky versus Nick Foles from the Chicago Bears. And it's like, it hurts, but it's true, right? And that's kind of what I was alluding to. This, I don't think either one of these players is going to save the C9 series, right? And
right.
I know, and I think I have been very fair to Damonte over the course of this season. After I took a very hard stance against him, as you guys remember, I think I've been very fair. But yeah, it's just like, there are a lot of fans out there that have like a Damonte is the savior thing in their brains. And it's not that, guys. I promise. It's not that. Don't forget that we were performing steadily worse while he was still on the team. Now, I'm not saying that means it's 100% his fault. I'm not. But I'm saying that the team as constituted then, in that meta at that time, it was not trending in the right direction. Even when we were winning, the line was always, we're barely winning these games. We're winning games that we shouldn't be winning. And our game length is getting longer and longer and longer, right? Like it was not good. The trend was not good even when we were winning. So I agree with Lil Thieves here. Like this isn't really a debate worth having because the difference is so marginal. I wish one of them was easily apparently better than the other one. You know, I wish we could just look and go, cool. It's better this way. Let's go with that. But now it's just like, let's keep going with the one that's in there. So
Lil Thieves has the right take on this. It is mostly irrelevant if what you're talking about is how do you do better than we did. And I don't think either of these mids is the answer to that. I think you listen to this conversation and you could be forgiven if you thought, or if you just deduced that we were the best team in the league, unbeatable, crushing people, and then we decided for no reason to put Ryoma in, right? Like it wasn't that.
That is, let's be quite clear, that is the narrative that some people are painting on Reddit and on Twitter and everything.
It's weird.
It doesn't make sense, but that is literally what people are saying, you know? It's like
right. I mean, look, I get it. One, Damonte is a super likable guy as a character and a player on the team. Like I loved his energy in the, post-game victory. Like he brought a lot of fun. I get it. He's a likable guy. And I'm not, even like the back and forth you had with him calling him a corn dog. It's all fun. It was all good fun. Right. And he was cool about it too. Like he doesn't take himself too seriously. I like that. And I think a lot of people look at the lock-in and say, we were great then. Right. And we had Damonte and he was great. And he had great games. And we almost beat C9. So I get it. I get where people are coming from with this, but there is a recency portion of this equation, and it is less favorable in all ways. So, yeah, Lil Thieves has it. Thank you, Lil Thieves, for getting that take to us. That was the right one.
Mm-hmm. And just for the record, because a lot of people are saying stuff about this. Yes, we understand the team had success with Damonte. But again, the trajectory was bad. The success was really front loaded and it kind of got worse. So there's something going on there, right? And since other people brought it up, like personality things, I mean, he always seemed, at least on the heist, seemed like he had a good rapport with everybody. This to me felt like purely a performance decision, and it seemed justified to me. So, I don't think there was anything that was like done wrong here. And I say that being the one who also said at that point, I felt like Damonte, you might as well keep him in. When the Ryoma sub happened, even though I predicted it, I said, I mean, I would actually prefer to keep Damonte in at this point. So,
you were both prophet and fantasy GM there.
Yeah.
And there are different views. That's fine.
Yeah. So it's like there's lots of situations. This is still going in chat. There's lots of situations where teams do well and then they start doing poorly, and that means something needs to change. You know what I mean? Like current form is a thing, right? And so you can't ignore that, man.
And trajectory.
Yeah,
right.
Trajectory is a thing too. But again, when it comes to trajectory, we're not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to speak for you, Jordan, but I'm not placing blame specifically on them. You know,
them being
Damonte and Ryoma. Like I think that this is a multivariate thing, and not having objectively strong mid laner is a problem, but that's not specifically Damonte and Ryoma's fault, right? Even though they aren't the player that we would hope that they would be, so far. You know, does that make sense? It's like that's just who they are, and that's kind of just how it is. So yeah, I just don't want to weigh too heavily in on that. Like when you're talking about the players, we're not saying like these are bad dudes because of this. It's just like, hey, like this is who they are as a player, and it's not working for us. And there are other pieces to that, which we're going to talk about. Is there anything else, Jordan, you felt like we learned from the C9 series, just as a whole?
It is incredibly and super clear that that team is better than us, and they're on a different tier, right? Like this game is really what, in my mind, cemented the fact that we are of a different caliber of team right now than C9 and very likely TL and TSM. We'll see how that goes. It made that gap very, very clear. And I don't think it had been as clear early on, right? Like even our games against C9 in the round robin felt better than this game did. And I think it's because C9 has continued to improve. They're getting better. And I think we have kind of continued to lose our way a little bit. Like this was not us at our best form from even the split, I would say. And I think at the current form, it feels like we are just not in that top tier right now. So that for me is one of the key takeaways.
Yeah. The other thing, so yes to all of that. The other piece of this is, like I said, the other thing I was watching was what are we going to draft for our players?
Yeah.
And look, it's not like we did nothing unusual. There was a Cho'Gath pick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's cool. I like that idea. It didn't really result in anything other than a cool play on perks. There was the Jinx. The FBI Jinx finally happened. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's not like there were no changes to what we did as far as draft goes. But we did pick Senna twice. We did a fasting Senna twice. We played fairly standard, I thought, in terms of like stylistic approach. And that raises a question, I think, Jordan, that you were asking. I mean, a lot of people have asked this question, but you were talking about this before the show, is why are we playing standard against a team who is better than us?
It's the age-old question, Cole. It's like there are different philosophical camps of League of Legends. It's like, do you want to lose well against a team that's better than you? Or do you want to try something and see if you can pull off a win, right? It's like if you play C9 at their game, there is maybe a 2% chance that you win. And that it's probably dependent on Ssumday winning top lane so hard that he carries.
Yeah.
Which just doesn't happen that often. Like it's not even, it's it's kind of a 1v9, which the FBI is there too. So it's more than a 1v9. Or you can try to catch them off guard and maybe it's a 5% chance. So it's a game of percentages. But yeah, it feels like we seemed kind of content or resigned to just playing the version of this game that they are better at.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, and I think in large part, we have certainly come to expect that, right? Zix is not a wacky dude when it comes to League of Legends and his approach or philosophy to it. So we shouldn't have expected that. I didn't expect it. And I think, we've been talking about it in different ways. Like, where are we at in the meta? Are we going to try some of these champions who are popping up? Like, I think he has a very traditional approach to the game. And this felt like that, right?
Yeah. And it also just, like, as you mentioned, just feels like a losing proposition against a team like C9. So I don't know if I felt good about the game plan for this week. And we had a full week to just focus on this series, right? And it felt lackluster because even though we did see a couple of pick variations,
yeah,
the style wasn't really different and it felt defeating. So I don't know, man. That's kind of a sticking point for me. Like, one of the things that we quote unquote learned from this series is that it looks like we're not willing to play something weird. Now, do you want the hope theory here? Yep. The hopeful theory is that we knew we were going to lose to C9, so we're saving that for teams that we can actually beat, like a Dignitas, right? Where Dignitas is going to be a very interesting series. We'll talk about it more later, but that's going to be a team that we can beat. We probably should beat, but we may need to pull out some stops to beat in a 5-game series, right? So maybe it was, hey, it's C9. Let's just say FF go next and save our good strats for that. So do I believe that that's the case? I don't think I do. But it is possible. And who are we to surmise that we know what the staff is thinking?
It's getting harder for me to assume that there is some grand master plan behind the strategy of this team that is just slowly revealing itself. Like I'm waiting for the prestige, at the end of the magic trick,
right?
And it just is still not there. So maybe Dig series is it. I'm not holding my breath. I mean, but that being said, like, and this is not to get into the Dig series, but I think that is a team against which you can kind of do what we've just said you can't do against C9, right? Like,
right.
Ssumday is better than Fake God at League of Legends. At least for the last
historically.
I mean, really, if you break it down, that is the entire premise upon which our last 2 seasons has gone, basically, right? Fake God playing second chair to Ssumday, Fake God getting his shot in the LCS because we couldn't play Ssumday even though we wanted to, Ssumday smurfing in Academy and then coming back, right? Like, if Fake God is better than Ssumday at League, and that is what we find out this weekend, I might be jumping ahead in the agenda here, but boy, we got a disaster, right? Because we just let the domestic guy who, like, he was on our books as recently
as... Save it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk
anyway,
about it. Save it.
That is, that's a thing.
Yeah. So I suppose that all of this is, we're circling the drain with this. We're beating around the bush. The coaching thing, the staff thing. Disclaimer. I really, really, really dislike talking about this because we know so little about what happens. We know so little about who the staff is and what they're doing. We know so little about why decisions are made, why things are drafted, why strategies are practiced and implemented. We know nothing about the team dynamics, all of that. Plus, on top of that, I'm always hesitant to have any conversation that might lead to either people sending some nasty social media posts to the people we're talking about, which I will say, I know that some of our listeners are doing that with Zix in particular, and I would encourage you to rethink that strategy. If you don't like what he's doing, it's fine to be critical, but don't be hateful. And I know for a fact that some of you have been hateful. I just, like, we got to have that conversation. I hate it. I hate talking about it, but the trajectory is something that keeps coming up, right? It's not good. The team has not improved. It's gotten worse over the course of the split. There's the question of meta, right? We did well. We had a favorable meta. We slipped out of the meta. The team does worse, right? That's an acceptable narrative to me. But I'm not sure how I feel about how there hasn't really been a significant meta shift since that initial one, and we still seem to have been getting worse. So to me, it's impossible to rule out criticizing the coaching and the staff at this point, which makes me so sad. But I feel like it's unavoidable at this point. I don't know. I don't know what is happening behind the scenes to make these decisions, but it seems like there's no improvement and there's not really creativity. What do we do with this?
Yeah. It's hard for me. I mean, everything you said about why this is not like there's a reason we don't talk about this every week or ever really. And
yeah, we very rarely talk about this.
Yeah. I mean, in large part, it's because, at least personally, let me just double down on this idea of like, over the weekend I tweeted, we let Olaf through for Blabber.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a bad idea, right? Like, surely there's no way he beats us again with that champion. I think that is the appropriate amount of shade to throw or cast on the people responsible for these kinds of decisions.
Right.
Like, it's fine to criticize the moment and the decision. And you really, I think the place to stop is when you start thinking about the person. Because look, it's not that serious, guys. It really isn't. There's a lot of stuff I've seen too about basketball, players and people just receiving all kinds of nasty stuff.
Yeah, EJ Liddell especially. Yeah.
It just isn't that serious. And you'd be hard pressed to find bigger fans of 100 Thieves than me and Cole. And at no point would I ever wish anything, and like we say this every time, it's hard stuff. Every time a player gets benched or swapped out or a move happens, like there are people that the personalities I don't like in the league scene. They're usually not on our team, thankfully. Yeah. But you still don't. It's just a game. So that's my little mini rant on that. But here's the thing for me. I think the only thing we can do is say what the approach seems to be, and whether it seems to be working. And I feel like we've seen Zix now across multiple iterations of both players, meta, season, and I feel like we do run into similar challenges. And whether it's because and I think for me, I've always kind of taken this out to say, look, maybe it's just that certain players have very limited pools, and as the person who's strategically responsible for this team, your options are so limited that what are you supposed to do, right? Like if you put somebody out there to play a champion they're not good at, you do look like a goof. You look like a dummy who doesn't know what he's doing, right? Yeah. Like why would you ever put him on that? He got dumpstered. So I get that. And I can understand and appreciate that. But at some point you have to just say it's the coach's job to find a way to make it work, right? With the pieces you have available to you. And I think that the sense I'm starting to get for Zix is that he is really dedicated to trying to find a way to play standard League of Legends as if he has the best players in the region, and he never has. And I think as a result, we've never been as good as the best teams. And maybe that's the kind of coach he is, right? Like I think you see this prototype in all sports, right? Fundamentals, drills, it's consistency, and it's just execution. And those just that's not a roster, right? Like we are not the players who need to do the basics, the best of anyone, because the hands win out the rest, right? It's like you put people in the right position, and then they will take care of the moments where it's reliant on individual skill. We know what the macro is. We know where to be. We know how to play. So that, for me, that's the sense I'm starting to get for Zix. And I think the reality of the situation is we have maybe a couple of players who are top 3 at position. Like at our best, you could argue for 3. At our worst, it's 1. And I haven't seen the level of creativity needed to make our team compelling in those kinds of roster configurations. And for me, that's the thing, is we still aren't the team with the best talent in the LCS. And I don't see a path to that within the next year and a half for us. That's concerning, is I think if we rely on this, whether it's coach or staff or whatever you want to say, I'm worried that we're going to continue to just try to be a worse version of these top teams.
Yeah, and I think that there is like a cadre of people in the league scene that are like they debate like the textbook of how you play League of Legends, right? Like from the LS school, where
right,
it's like, oh, okay, these are the proper items that you build, and these are the proper draft compositions that you do, and it's like there's like theoretical League of Legends, and I if you put too many of those minds together, then I think you fall into a situation like this. Now, the pedigree is important. Zix has a very long career as an LCS coach because he's been a good LCS coach over the span of his career. But this might be a situation where we are, doing that textbook League of Legends stuff too much, where it's like, look, I coach good League of Legends. I coach the LCK school of League of Legends. And, that's what we're going to do. And then, like you're saying, when the players can't accommodate that, you have to play a different way. You have to come up with some kind of gimmick. You have to have the 7 seconds or less kind of approach to the game. Like you have to invent something that works for your players. And it seems like those adjustments aren't being made. And honestly, like I've been thinking about this as I'm gonna go back to March Madness again, because I've watched March Madness at like over the years, and as a team that was for a very long time always talking about new coaching candidates, I got to know some of who our coaching candidates are, and you see some of the things that happen where coaches thrive in some situations and then do not thrive in others. I'm thinking about Shaka Smart right now, whose Texas team just lost to VCU in the tournament. Well, where did Shaka Smart coach before Texas? He coached at VCU. And do you know why he was so successful at VCU? Because he did weird things with less talent. And that talent would go on to do very well under his weird system. Then he went to a place like Texas where you have to play more standard, because guess what? You have NBA quality players, or NBA prospect quality players. And you can play standard and do that. And he was not as good at doing that, you know? And some people don't adapt. Some people do. Matt Painter at Purdue, who is the head coach of the basketball team, but decided to put in offensive and defensive coordinators, which is an idea borrowed from football, because he felt like he was out of touch on certain things, right? Like those kind of conversations are really interesting. And League of Legends is its own thing. This is apples to oranges, but I think the principles there can carry over. And I think that's what we're seeing, is this kind of, that's what it feels like, and until there's some kind of evidence that, that makes me think differently, I think this is the best theory that we have as to what's going on in the coaching situation. So it seems like we have somebody who has a great understanding of standard League of Legends and probably lacks some of the creativity that would be better suited for the roster that he currently has.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my working theory on this. And again, just to say it for like the 100th time, it gives me no pleasure to do that, to criticize players or coaches, you know what I mean? But that's just what it feels like at this point.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that I like the basketball analogies. Yeah. You look at Zix's resume, and it's a lot of teams who had a lot of budget, who had a lot of star players, right? And that's a different job. That's a different. Your task is different. Not to mention, like we have let players go who are now competing with us.
That's exactly right. This is a great segue.
Maybe that's a segue. I think I've ever heard one, right?
That's a great segue because the next thing on our rundown was to talk about this upcoming Dignitas series. So most of you guys are probably already aware of this, but just in case you aren't, Dignitas is a team that has overperformed people's expectations, at least. I think those expectations had a lot to do with three things. One is the mid laner, Sligo.
Mm-hmm.
One is the top laner, Fake God. And then one is the jungler, Dardoch. Now, Dardoch's always been a very talented but couldn't keep cool kind of player and had trouble fitting in, and he plays unusually, whatever. Okay, so that's the story on Dardoch. That's the less important context for us than the other two big questions about Dignitas that so far have gone in Dignitas' favor. Sligo and Fake God being our academy products. Mm-hmm. So Fake God was someone we signed. Actually, Sligo was too, right? Out of Scouting Grounds, that we signed out of Scouting Grounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Team Mountain. Yep.
Team Mountain. Well, we took the whole team and made them our academy team, basically. The story of them on 100 Thieves, at least according to the fandom, has been probably a little different between the two of them, right? Fake God was seen as someone who had a lot of potential, a lot of gifted mechanical ability, very young, high potential player. We talked about him maybe being an heir to the Ssumday throne for 100 Thieves. So there's a lot of hype there. Sligo, maybe not as hype, but he was on that team. High hopes for him having the academy position. These players got rotated in to the 100 Thieves starting roster when the 100 Thieves starting roster sucked, right? Unexpectedly just sucked. And we plugged these guys in. And these guys, they weren't ready, right? They weren't ready. It wasn't their time to do that. And they did not do particularly well. So they went back to academy. And the story has just always been, there's those 100 Thieves players again, right? And when they got their LCS positions, it's look, 100 Thieves rejects, who weren't even good enough to save that 2019 horror are now starting for Dignitas. How good could they possibly be? And what we've seen,
approximately this good.
Yeah, what we've seen is that they're actually pretty decent. They haven't been world beating, but they have put together games where they've knocked off teams where, you would really think they're outclassed. We actually have done well against them. Maybe our intimate knowledge has paid off. But these are guys that I think the community is starting to see as proven they belong as starters. Success stories, right? Whereas when they left 100T, it was not seen that way. This was last resort kind of option for Dignitas. These guys ended up being pretty good. There is so much tied up in there by way of implication. What does it mean that players that we largely had given up on and that seemed to not develop very well at 100T actually maybe developed pretty well, and actually we got rid of them and are maybe feeling some sort of regret? I don't know. I wouldn't say that outright right now. I wouldn't say the team is doing everything they can to get Sligo back, but it does seem like by some measure we as 100 Thieves kind of missed out on something. And now our rejects, and not to mention Aframu, who was in our original roster, is on that team as well. So we've got 3 former 100T players, that are kind of seemed as rejects from our team. who are doing pretty well and could easily threaten us this weekend.
Yeah. It's both the feel-good story of the year and the most devastatingly deflating way to lose in the playoffs at the same time. And Aframu is single-handedly putting to shame this idea of an age curve, if that is a thing, right? Like, he is resurgent and he's having a great split, and he's still a player who's able to bring a lot to a team. So, yeah, on all counts, this is the terror match that, honestly, like, if we lose to Dig, I think you have questions to ask about everything, one, but also, like, who's responsible for who let this happen?
Yeah.
Who let this happen? How could this happen? It's got to be a topic of conversation, and there's going to be some really hard ones if Dig beats us.
It's a complete lose-lose, man. Like,
it is.
If our team beats these guys, like, oh yeah, well, they're supposed to beat them.
Yes.
But if we lose, it's like it is the worst possible scenario narrative-wise for us.
Yeah.
On top of everything that's happened up to this point, if we get bounced by our rejects, we're going to be a laughingstock.
Absolutely. And rightfully so. Honestly, rightfully so. This is kind of like, oh man, this really is worst case scenario. Even just the matchup here, just running into them, because if we lose to them, we have had our predictable outcome against C9.
Yeah.
And this would just be ground zero, man.
This
Rock
is catastrophic. Bottom. Yeah. If that happens.
Yeah. If it happens, we'll see. But yeah.
Ordinarily, we don't read chat during the pod, but True Venom says, to be honest, for 100T reform, it's best for 100T to lose Dignitas. From the angle of, like, rip the Band-Aid off and get the thing done, like, it's painful and we got to go through it. I agree with that, but holy crap. I'm not sure I'm prepared for I might have to just, like, deactivate my Twitter for a while.
Yeah.
If that happens, because I don't want to see what, like, I don't know what 100T haters have to say about this. Just
flip it to a different hobby of yours, Cole, for a little bit. Just take some time to cool off. Are we going to get to this idea of, like, so you mentioned that Fake God and Saligo were both members of our LCS roster at one point or another. And the bar for success there for them was to save our split. And I believe there's actually a video with Nadeshot talking to Saligo saying that it explicitly wasn't. That was not the measure. And it was. Whether or not, like, people were saying that. He came in not to develop. He came in to try to hold it together, right? Like, that was job one for him. And it was an incredibly difficult one that he wasn't prepared for. And it changed the conversation about him in the scene until this year. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't know if we want to get into this now because we're already pretty late in the pod, but this for me feels like, I think, the biggest question that we have to think about going into this next split. What are we doing? What are we really doing? Are we going to continue to take promising young talent? We have the first amateur squad in LCS. We were the first to that. We have promising amateur talent. We put one of them straight in the LCS. We've got others in the academy. Poom's back in the academy now, which I think is a good spot for him.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with them? Are we going to wait until we need them to put their finger in the dam until they can no longer, do that? Or are we going to actually try to develop them and play them? Because so far we've used them as stand-ins where either we've, because of import rules, not been able to play anyone else, or just didn't have we didn't have a person that we had confidence in. That's not the environment where somebody's going to thrive, right? Like, that's not where Saligo is going to, and now we know the environment where somebody like Saligo gets to thrive is where he's a member of a squad that can play together, develop together, have strategies together, and eventually get to this point. They've overperformed every measure. Everybody thought they were a bottom two team. they're potentially going to knock us out of playoffs. They have a chance at that, right? They've got the shot there to do it. So what are we doing? Like, we need to affirmatively state what our plan is for all of this amateur talent that we're going to bring into the scene, because we're going to keep doing it. This year's 100X is less splashy than last year's, I'd say, for sure.
For sure.
Year one was a crazy success, but you still have to imagine we're going to find 16, 17-year-olds who are incredibly talented and could play at the highest level. And what is our plan? Right now, I'm worried that our plan is to sub them in for somebody who they won't be as good as. The fans will all reject because they're not saving us. And then we spin them off to somebody else to get developed and potentially knock us out of the playoffs 3 years from now. Like, that is my concern. I don't feel like we have a clear answer on that. And I guess my bigger thought here is, at some point, do we just say, look, we're going to, like, we had this whole idea about being a developmental squad, and we went away from it largely, and we started saying firepower instead of development. And like, I'm not sure that was the right move, because right now we feel like we're solidly 4th or 5th with little upside, because upside means you're beating TL, TSM, and C9. And I don't see that happening, right? Like, I don't know what it takes to do that with this current roster, especially now that Ssumday is slumping, and that's a question mark, right?
Maybe if we went back to patch 11.1.
There we go. Play the finals on 11.1. Get Damonte back in. So I don't know. That's my rant of the day. I don't know what we're doing, but my concern is that we're doing the wrong thing by letting good domestic talent go because we don't have, I don't know, the courage or gumption to actually put them in a position where they can become the next great domestic player, right? Like, do we not have the patience to see that through to fruition? I don't know. Questions
that need answering. I would be a fool to say anything in response to that. We're going to let that one hang out in the air.
Thank you.
So let's do the remaining listener takes and move into our predictions for this weekend. And go from there. So,
okay.
Let's see. And some of these we've already talked about, so I'll breeze through a couple of these. Noxwar says, do you guys believe the current issues the team is dealing with stem from the coaching staff or the players actually underperforming? Obviously, I think it's a mix of both. I think Ssumday and Closer are underperforming and would have big question marks for me. And generally just, with what we're seeing on the trajectory of the team, I think there's concerns about coaching staff. I don't think we need to rehash that. Here's something related, but a little more like there's a different facet of that conversation. So I'm fine talking about this for a moment. Zach Remsburg on Twitter says, the coaching and management staff have repeatedly failed this team and will continue to be its biggest hindrance going forward. This team in lock-in had coordinated and proactive plays, great macro decisions, and team fighting. This team now consistently gives up important objectives, takes terrible fights, and are getting caught out constantly. This is not a skill issue. We have incredible players. So that's Zach's take in it. Now, somehow when we were going through the coaching aspect of this, and we talked about the trajectory of the team, but we didn't call out these things in particular. I think I am guilty of just saying meta shift a little too often.
I know. That's my thought
when
too.
Zach lays this out, like coordinated proactive plays, great macro decisions, and team fighting, that used to be the MO. Those things, they are subject to the meta, but they're not inherently tied to the meta, right? You can execute this. You can have the same kind of mindset and execute the plays with different champions. But, it's like you go for the same kind of thing. That is one thing that I don't think is deniable, that it does not feel like this team plays together anymore, especially on the top side of the map.
That is a really good point, Cole. I think that's been the immediate thing. Everybody says, well, the meta shifted and they stopped playing the champions they needed to actually have the success that they did early on. are we sure about that? Right? Like, can we be sure about that? I don't know what you would have to do to some of the champions that we played early that made them dominant from a meta perspective to make it so that we couldn't at least play those same plays. Like, I feel like if you knock like 5 AD per level off a champion or whatever it is they do, right, to nudge a champ out of the meta, like, did they take their R away? Like, do we not have, like, it just doesn't add up, I guess. And I get it. It's a game of ADs. But it does feel like part of me wonders, is that just a convenient way for us to say that we abandoned the style that we had in favor of something different, and that abandonment hasn't actually paid off? I don't think we know the answer to that.
Yeah. And it can always be a combination of both, which is the cheap answer, but it's probably the true answer. So, Jay Forlenza Jr. says it's clear that there are chemistry issues with Ssumday and Closer. Is this something that needs more time to gel, or does Ssumday stylistically not fit as he seems to be far more passive than the rest of the team? That's a reasonably good question. Is Ssumday a stylistic match for the team? Maybe the answer is when he plays Renekton, yes. But now that he does not play Renekton or cannot play Renekton because he is not permitted to by the other teams, it's not working out. So it does feel like shades of the struggles of 100T past in that sense.
So it feels wrong to me on its face to say that Ssumday is passive. Yeah. Like, this is the guy who, like, against Golden Guardians, beat them with Lucian on his own, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is the guy who killed them all with Aatrox. Like, it is so weird to me for exactly that reason. I would never have thought of him as a passive player. So something has changed that's made him more passive. But it doesn't feel to me like it's just a stylistic thing, because that's never been his style. So it feels to me like the change is indicative of something else not working rather than his own style not meshing, I guess, if that makes sense.
Ianucci Rob says Kenvi should be starting over Closer to start summer. That is among the hottest takes I think we will field today. Instant reaction.
It goes back to my rant, Cole, of what are we doing here? And if what we're doing here is playing the long game and looking at the future, yeah, like that's a strategy that you have to commit to. But right now, I think you could. There's an argument to say that even if you're not thinking about the future, Kenvi might be putting in better performances than Closer is currently. Right? Like, there's a chance of that happening.
I'm not so confident to make that call. I haven't watched as much Academy as I should, and if Kelsey is listening, I'm sorry, Kelsey.
Yeah.
There's just been a lot of 100 Thieves to watch this spring. But my inclination is like, let the boy cook some more before we do that. So I honestly, I don't know which direction we're leaning towards for the summer, if there's going to be roster changes or not. And honestly, I don't think 100T knows either yet.
Yeah.
But while I think Kenvi is undeniably talented, and I think he will someday be a very good jungler in LCS, having seen some of the early stuff that's happened to some of our prospects when we put him in, I would just prefer if we were very patient with him to give him some time. And it might help to give him a buddy to rotate in with. So maybe Tenacity when he's further down the line. And also, because I think Tenacity needs more work than Kenvi, but is a player with incredible potential. He's super young. I think Tenacity just turned 18, if I remember right, like recently turned 18. So maybe we let those two continue to do their thing, and then when the time is right later on, we rotate them in. But I don't know if starting Summer that way is the play. I would say no.
If we get a strong import mid, does your answer to this change?
If we get a strong import mid, I would like to see it in just a 1-to-1 replacement and see what it does to the team.
But we don't have an import.
Oh, yeah, closer. So, yes, in that case.
Okay.
here's actually, yeah, probably. Here's the deal. Play the import mid at all costs. Burn it all down to play the import mid. So, yeah, I guess Kenby would need to go in there. It's worth it for the import mid.
There you go. All right.
Good question, Jordan. Arrigo says, I'm probably saying that wrong. Arrigo, sorry. At what point does this fall on Zix? Yes. Talked about that. Instead of benching Damonte, why couldn't we push him on champions that fit his style? We talked about that as well. Why are we playing Ssumday on strong side champs, but playing through bot side? That's an interesting thing. Feels like we have a coaching issue more than anything. So Ssumday on strong side champs, but playing through bot side. Is this true? Let's see. Let's go to the last 8 games real quick. I'm going from the most recent game played backwards. Cho'Gath, Aatrox, GP, Gnar, Camille, Gragas, Shen, Gnar. It's a mix.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mix. But I will say this. I think that like I said, was it the first game of the weekend where Closer was actively in top lane all the time? I felt like that was the first time it had happened in a very long time. So regardless of if it's a mix or not, during the times when he is playing a stronger carry potential champ, we have not been up there with him largely. So
right.
Good insight. Anything to add to that one?
The question of benching Damonte, putting him on champions that fit his style. I mean, that kind of gets back to our question about, do you play the weird League of Legends or do you play the standard League of Legends? And I think we know what the answer to that is too. So I think that's why we couldn't push him on those champions. And maybe he wasn't very good at them, but still, I think that's always the question for me. When you see that the standard isn't working, what else are you trying? We won't know that. It might be that they're trying it all and it's worse. And so, we just don't get to see scrims.
Yeah. Josh Jacobson 123. We've got 2 more of these. Josh Jacobson 123 says, I feel like the overall decrease across the board, excluding FBI, in my opinion, which I later clarify with him. I asked him if he would be included in that, and he says yes. So it's really bot lane. So he's saying, I feel like the overall decrease across the board, excluding bot lane from the team, has to say something about the coaching staff or management. And, again, something we've talked about. But then he says, how haven't we improved since lock-in? And that is what I do want to just hang out there. That's what I would hang on, the coaching and the structure of the team. How haven't we improved since lock-in? Even if there's a meta shift, we haven't coped with it. We just haven't.
Right.
So, all right. One final one from our good friend, Zach Lindsay from League Leaders. Miss you, Zach. Miss your podcast. Who says, this team has not been coached well since lock-in. The Damonte and Ryoma swap was a band-aid solution to an issue. The team had set plays that weren't working anymore. Coaches couldn't come up with solutions, new plays, new picks, etc., for the players to use. So instead, they swapped the most obvious player who was struggling. Their read on draft this series was pretty sketchy to me, and that leads me to see a coaching issue more than a player issue.
This dude sounds like he should have a podcast.
He does. He's smarter than me about League too, so I'm not going to debate him on this.
Yeah.
I do just want to highlight that. It's like the Damonte Ryoma swap is the easiest, most obvious thing. Yeah. And maybe there's not creativity in that. But I will say I still see the merit in that switch. I definitely see the merit in that decision, even though I would have kept it the same way at that point, surprisingly. I see the merit in that shift. So I don't want to completely take a dump on that, but I do agree with that assessment that it is the most obvious thing to do.
Right. And it's, basically he's saying you're treating the symptoms, not the root of the problem, right? Like the root of the issue here seems to be that our overall play style just wasn't working. I think that's what for me, that's what I'm picking up on the most in what he says. Cole, all of these, this is the first time since we've started doing this show years ago that every listener take we've had feels in some way to be about the coaches. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, in one way or another, I think it is. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Crowdsourcing the problem here, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Whatever it is, I hope we can figure it out. Let's talk about Dignitas predictions. Almost ready to activate Prophet Cole. I'll let you go first, though, so you can't say I'm stealing your thunder.
Yeah. I'll go first. Oh my gosh. I don't know what to say here, Cole. I'm afraid to say anything that could be in any way associated with bringing disaster on this team that we both love. I'm going to say it. I think we lose 2-3. I think we are tilted from the C9 games, feeling deflated. I've seen this team at their most deflated in the heist, and that's a dark place. I don't want to go there. I just feel like right now, so many of the things that have been reliably true in the past, and I think specifically when we played against Dig, are in question to me. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. 2-3.
Jordan, I am activating Prophet Cole, and I am telling you that this weekend is indeed going to be a 3-2, but it's going to be in favor of 100 T.
It's going to be in favor of 100 T. Okay, I was hoping you'd say that.
100 Thieves are going to win this weekend, 3-2, in a very close series in which we lose a game that we should not lose, and they lose a game that they should not lose. Ultimately, it's going to come down to game 5, and we're going to win. Now, you did say that some of the things that we've relied on to beat Dig previously have not gone our way, like or now are like not working for us. You probably, if I'm guessing, you're talking about Renekton.
I'm talking about top lane. I'm talking about let's not forget, one of the wins we had against Dig was when Dardoch played Rengar. He's kind of stopped his goofy jungle tour. He's playing picks that now just make more sense. So I don't think we can count on the Rengar coming through again and gifting us kills about once every 3 minutes. So yeah, I think that Dardoch is good, and right now I think he's playing better than Closer is. And I'm afraid that there is a world where Fate God is also playing better than Ssumday is. Ryoma, Saligo are pretty similar players. I would say that you could make the argument that Saligo has the edge on control mages, right? And that's sort of where we're at with the meta. I hope that we get to see Ryoma on a Silas or something where he can pop off and punish the more conservative approach. But we didn't play it at all last weekend. So I don't know if maybe now we've kind of gone away from that one a little bit, or maybe, I don't know, maybe got hit by a nerf or something that no one knows about. Who knows? It's the meta. Who knows what it is.
Here's what I'm thinking.
So, yeah.
I'm thinking that there are two main factors in play. One is that, remember, the thing about this team is that we've ended up exactly where we thought we were, right? Mm-hmm. Without really many surprises. And we thought we were better than Dignitas.
Yep.
And we 2-0'd them during the season. And I agree that top lane is looking more questionable for us. And so is jungle. But nevertheless, for whatever reason, we seem to match up pretty well against them. And do you know who does not do well against us is a man named Johnson. So I think bot lane is just going to be too much to handle.
Wait. Neo?
Or Neo. I'm sorry. Neo. Yeah, sorry.
You're thinking.
I just always think of the Aphromoo Johnson pairing. Neo. who so he does not match up well against us.
He hasn't.
He gets eaten alive by FBI. I'm probably gonna do that all weekend in my own notes too after moving Watson. That's just what I remember. And the other thing is, I think that there's going to be pride for our guys that kicks in for this, and they just won't let us loose. It'll be close. It'll be too close.
I thought that against Golden Guardians, man. I thought it against Golden Guardians.
Wait, what? Golden Guardians, we came off a loss against TSM in the middle of the split and lost Golden Guardians. Nah, I don't think this is like end of the season, you know? I think the pride is going to
win or go home. Win or go home.
Yeah.
I hope you're right, Cole. As you always are right. I'm relieved to hear that you've called it this way. That makes me feel better about going into the weekend, I guess.
Do you know what is sure to happen is that it's going to be very stressful, and we're going to have that like my heart hurts thing that we get.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good chance at that. Yeah. Has Dignitas ever beat us in a best of 5?
Have we played? Oh, well, I mean, if you count the Clutch Gaming
or
years.
Did they used to be best of 3? Is that what those series used to be?
Yeah.
Or they always best of 5? I feel like they used to do early rounds or best of 3. And then
have we played against them since the Clutch days?
I can't remember in the playoffs.
I don't know.
I don't think we have.
But I mean, they're a different team anyway. It's different. So, but yeah.
But I still think of them as, I feel like against Clutch, there's this long history of us going close with them and winning.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see if that juju carries over. But yeah, I just think bot lane's gonna be out of control, and the pride will carry us through. So, Jordan, I hate to inform you that you're wrong, but I'm happy to inform you that you're wrong at the same time, because that means Thunder Thieves will win.
Yeah, that's great. It's great.
Little Thieves, oh my gosh, just pointed out that if we win this will be the first best of 5 we've won since 2018. If there's ever anything to make me feel worse about my prediction, that's it. That's it.
Oh, that hurts.
That really does hurt.
That is not the stat we're looking for at this point.
Yeah.
Dang.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing myself proven right over the course of this weekend, and talking about the future matchup against whoever it's going to be on the other side of this. Again, we are active on Twitter at 100 Talk Pod. We stream on Twitch at 100 Talk Pod. 100 Talk Podcast on YouTube. And we also have a Discord. So look at our bios, basically for anything. Info in the description of the videos, or in our Twitter profile. You can get a link to join Discord. It's in Twitch chat right now. Come hang out with us all week long as we advance towards a victory this weekend. And we'll talk to you guys after that happens. So thanks for tuning in to 100 Talk with us. As always, we love you and we miss you already.
Take care.
All right, and now let's raid. Who are we raiding? Chat, who are we raiding?
Who's going to get a raid?
Let's see. Let me bring up my raid list. My raid list is always pitiful. It never shows me many options. Maybe I can just go to Twitch. Here we go. Travis is live. Don't want to raid him this week. We've raided Travis before several times. I think Jarrett's live. You want to go get Jarrett?
Yeah, he's a super sub.
Jarrett, let's go raid Jarrett. Everybody,
we're coming for you, Jarrett. Get your channel points. Do the raid.
All right, stick around, everybody, for the Jarrett raid. And we'll see you on Thursday for Rec League.
Bye.
Goodbye.